Welcome to a Roboflow training movie. In this training movie, I will explain how you can capture cataloging errors, or how, in other words, you can maybe act on cataloging errors. I have a hot folder workflow in which I am going to drop some files, and I'm using a certain asset handling set. And then I'm going to catalog the file. Now, cataloging a file can go wrong. It can go wrong because maybe there's a corrupt file, maybe you don't support that file type that has been dropped into the drop folder, etc., etc. So errors need to be handled. The standard behavior of a hot folder is I drop a file in the drop folder, Roboflow sees it, processes it, and deletes it. Whatever you do in the cataloging process, it does, in the asset action script, it doesn't matter. The standard behavior is that it deletes the file. Now, you can change that behavior, but that's the default out-of-the-box behavior. So, let's first have a look at the standard out-of-the-box behavior, and I'm just going to not explain yet what this parameter is, but just let it run. I'm starting the workflow, and I have in my drop folder two files, a JPEG and a PDF. So I'm starting the workflow. I'm using the sample catalog and show log. What's happening here? Okay, my Cumulus was not started. So what happened is it tried to start Roboflow, and my Roboflow had been not used for a couple of days, so the connection to the Cumulus server timed out, which means that now, hey, there's a problem. Well, there's a problem, yes, but Roboflow is able to recover from that problem. It is actually going to relaunch the Cumulus connection, recreate the Cumulus collection, and then retry again. So what we see then is it finds this JPEG and it says cataloging was successful. Then it finds this PDF and now it fails. And it fails because asset not supported. On purpose, I used an asset handling set called JPEG only. And in that asset handling set JPEG only, I configured that I refused all formats except JPEGs. So the JPEGs were enabled, all the rest was disabled. So I'm accepting those. And that way, people cannot put files that I don't want in my catalog. I can prevent it. Now, if we look in the drop folder, we see that both files have disappeared. That's the standard behavior of Roboflow. It processes the file. Whatever you do with it is the problem or the responsibility of the action script, and then it is deleted. And so the cataloging process of the first file went fine. And it had a central asset location, so it moved the file into the central asset location. If the catalog does not have a central asset location and leaves the file where it is, then your first step in the workflow should be to move or copy the file to the final destination and then catalog it from there. The second file is a file that is refused to be cataloged. So if it's refused to be cataloged because of the asset handling set, it was a PDF and we wanted clearly something else, so it was refused and deleted. If you don't want that behavior, you could first decide before cataloging the file to copy it, take a backup. That's one option. Another option could be here to decide not to use this file. Not to delete this file from the drop folder. This is possible, so I am going to pick up another file that it will refuse, and let's see, I have here maybe some screenshots, and I know these are PNGs, so a PNG will of course be refused. here we are back in the drop. So I'm dropping this file. So I want now Roboflow not to delete this file. So what I'm doing is I have in my action script a special instruction and an internal instruction which sets a variable. It's a global variable and it's called hotfolder-delete-fileboolean. The default value is true. That's the default behavior, so you don't even need to set this if you're not changing the value of this particular variable. But in this case, I am going to change it when it goes wrong. So that means that I have to set it back to the OK version, to the standard value before each cataloging process. So I open my catalog, I catalog my file, and then I test if the record object, the Cumulus record object, exists. It only exists if the cataloging was successful. So I know if it doesn't exist, that it is unsuccessful. So what I do is, if it's successful, here I'm saying successful, cataloging successful, and here I do cataloging failed. And that's where I add this little instruction and I say, okay, you don't automatically have to delete or should not delete the dropped file in this workflow. So the delete file boolean of the hot folder workflow is set to false. So it means at the end of the processing, it will not delete the file if it fails. If it doesn't fail, it will delete the file. But if it doesn't fail, then if it does fail, then it will not delete the file. So I'm running the workflow again. Show log, and what happens is it finds this PNG and it is failed to catalog. Okay, it says I'm appending it to the gray list and I'm saving the blacklist. Difference between a gray list and blacklist is the first time it detects an error while the workflow is running in an endless loop, in a time interval, it will put it in the gray list, the list in memory. And as soon as in the next loop the file fails again, it will see, oh, but it's already in the gray list, so I'm adding it to the blacklist. So first things first, this cataloging failed, but the file is still there, so it didn't delete it. Now I'm running it again. This is an on-demand loop run. I'm running this workflow on demand, which means it's not in a continuous loop. It's not repeating. It's just whenever somebody or another script calls this to run. So what happens is in this next run, it has already loaded the blacklist and will not be processed. You can see there's already 2 files that won't be processed. Why did it put it immediately in the blacklist and did not wait? Because we're running it not in a loop, we're running it in on demand. So if you have a look here in the blacklist, here are your 2 files. So as long as this entry is in this file, it will no longer process it. It will just ignore it. It will say in the log each time that it encounters it, it will say, okay, this is a blacklisted file, so it's skipping it. I don't care about it because the blacklist is saved to disk. Let's clear the blacklist and let's change the workflow so that the workflow runs every 30 seconds. Good. So now this workflow, as soon as I start it, will run every 30 seconds, and there's our action script file. Start. It was no longer in the blacklist. So show log. What does it say? It has retried to do it, and it says appending to gray list. Remember, show log, the previous time we ran it again, it did not process it again because it had immediately put it in the blacklist. Now it did not put it in the blacklist. It put it in the gray list in memory because it knows this workflow is going to be executed again, and then I can decide. And what happens? File failed, it catalogs it again, and now you see saving to blacklist. So now it is appending it to the blacklist and saying, okay, this is the second time this file causes a problem, so now it's in the blacklist. Now it will no longer be processed. So there's a slight difference in behavior between a workflow that is called on demand. That could also be this workflow calling another workflow, and that other workflow will be then on demand, which means if an error occurs, it will immediately blacklist the file and it will immediately not process again in the next loop. If you have a workflow running on a time interval, then it will process the file. If it fails, it puts it in the gray list and nothing else happens. The next time it runs, maybe an hour later, maybe 5 minutes later, on interval, then it will automatically add the file. If it fails the second time, it will automatically add it to the blacklist. So this is an example of how you can deal with other errors. It is a good idea to make sure that your email notification is configured for your workflows here, because if a cataloging error occurs, it will send out an email notifying the admin that this workflow had problems cataloging a file. Another alternative, and what is sometimes used, is that this file that users or that an action script is configured to make a backup copy of the file. It is sometimes you could say, okay, I'll do that after the error occurs. Be careful, it's not certain that the file will allow access, because if the cataloging fails in a matter that the Cumulus tool was hanging on it, it could still be open in the Cumulus tool and you would not be able to copy it. So to play absolutely safe, if you want to make that backup copy, you should do the copy before you catalog the file. So yeah, this is a short example of how a hot folder can be made a little bit safer in how it behaves. Thank you for joining this training movie and hope to see you in the next one.